Hello and welcome back to Future Forward by CallMiner, this series where we dig into enterprise conversation intelligence, CX automation, and AI-powered customer engagement with people who actually live this stuff. If you're in CX, contact centers, or maybe you just care about how automation and analytics are reshaping industries like finance, healthcare, retail, telecoms, and tech, then you're in exactly the right place. So today I am joined by Kyle Carter from Zenylitics, who's been deep in the world of AI-driven customer experience for years. So Kyle, I think conversational AI is one of those terms that gets thrown around, but not everybody really knows what makes it different from, say, a regular chatbot. So what's the difference?
So this is where the term gets muddy. When most people hear conversational AI, they defer to the idea of the decision tree deterministic chatbot, right? Press 1 for billing or type yes to continue. That's not conversational AI. That's a phone tree that can chat with you. Real conversational AI is listening. It's using NLP and extracting context to figure out what you need, not just what keyword you happen to use. And, it can change direction mid-conversation when you do, like a human. The first one's an IVR on steroids. The other meets you where you are and shows real understanding.
Right. So it's less about scripts and more about understanding. But how does that play out in a real CX environment, like a contact center?
So two main places it really earns its keep. The first is direct customer facing virtual agent that can resolve a complex issue or complex question instead of escalating it or just passing it along. The second is real-time assist for the human agent. The AI is listening alongside them on the call, bringing up the right policy the moment it's relevant, and flagging when the customer says something that triggers a compliance event or suggesting the next move based on other calls that may have ended well. The agent stays in the driver's seat. The AI just makes sure they're not looking for an answer that they don't have.
That's interesting. So it's not AI replacing agents, it's AI making them sharper.
Yeah. And look, there's a real fear that AI is coming for the agency. And I don't entirely see it that way. I think of it less as a replacement, and more like having your sharpest colleague sitting next to you on every call. Someone who knows inside and out every policy doc. They remember every prior interaction with the customer, what worked and what didn't on the previous 100 calls. And they're feeding you exactly what you need when you need it. That's not replacing the agent. That's giving the agent a senior peer in their ear at all times. The human still reads the room, manages the customer's emotion, and makes the judgment call. The AI just makes sure that they're not doing it from memory on the fly.
Yeah, that makes sense. And what about across channels? Because I know customer journeys just aren't linear anymore. You might start in a chat on your lunch break, and then you pick up the phone later. How does that work?
So this is where it has to work. Customers don't think in channels. That's a term that we in our industry, we made that up. A customer starts a chat on their phone from their car in a parking lot, and then they call back a couple hours later. And the expectation is that that conversation gets picked up exactly where it left off. But the hard part practically is that most enterprises are running a patchwork, right? They've got one vendor for telephony, a different one for chat, and their CRM is stitched in somewhere as well. The conversation history lives in 5 different places. So the real work of conversational AI in this context isn't just to be smart. It's making that the layer that makes those systems behave like one. That context has to follow the customer, not just the software or the channel that they happen to start that conversation in.
That's a great point. And actually, let's hit on personalization. So how does AI actually make those interactions feel tailor-made?
So when it's done right, it blends historical data with what's happening in the conversation right now. So it should be able to suggest a product upgrade that matches your usage, or adjust its tone if you sound frustrated, or trigger an offer if it senses that you're at risk of churning. It needs to be responsive in a way that basic automation just can't be.
Got it. So better conversations for customers, less stress, and more support for employees kind of seems like a win-win.
Instinctually, I agree with you. I agree with win-win. I'd say that the distance between, intention and reality is wider than a lot of companies realize before they go in. Done well, customers get their answers faster. Agents aren't overwhelmed, and overall, your operation should run cleaner. The trick is the done well part. Companies that treat this like a feature and just bolt it on to their website or to their telephony are going to be disappointed. The ones that really rethink their data and the workflows around it, they're the ones that are going to win.
All right, that sounds great. So I want to throw this one to our viewers. What's one painful customer experience moment that you wish conversational AI could have fixed? Drop it in the comments and let's see if we can map those into real AI use cases in a future episode. Thanks for being here, Kyle, and thanks to everybody watching. If you found this valuable, you know what to do. Like, share, and keep the conversation going.